Oh, let me say for these videos, actually, I'm going to be trying something new, and I'm just going to be presenting my thoughts without having looked at the games with the engine. So you guys are just going to be seeing what I was thinking during the game and maybe what I was thinking like after the game. There was maybe one or two moments that I'll share with you guys that I checked with the engine in the games, just because like after the game I really had to know. But for the most part, these are just going to be kind of like my unfiltered thoughts. Okay, so round one, I'm playing Kevin Fong, whose feeder rating is 1780. His USCF rating is already over 2000. He goes e4, and I should mention this: these first two games were game in 60, so 60 minutes per side, 10-second delay, because I played the 3-day schedule instead of the 4-day. So first two games were G60, and then the next 5 games after that were more of a full time control that we'll get into, but it was 40 moves in 80 minutes, then 30 minutes after that, and then 30-second increment for the whole game. Okay, so e4, I decided to go with knight c6. This is what I usually do in like early rounds of tournaments, especially if I don't have a lot of info on the opponent. Like I didn't have a ton of time, and I don't think he had a lot of games to look at either. So I decided, okay, just to play my usual knight c6, the horse opening, as Grandmaster Izoria Zviad likes to call it, which I think is just a great way to kind of get a very playable position right out of the opening. He goes knight c3, which I was not really sure exactly what he wants with this one. Most players will just play like d4 or knight f3 and then d4. But knight c3, I go d6. The idea behind this system is basically to set up a perk with knight f6, g6, bishop g7, and so on. But he goes f4. So now I realize, okay, he wants some kind of Grand Prix attack. Or if I play like knight f6 here, knight f3, g6, d4, then we transpose into Pirt's defense, Austrian attack, where black played early move knight c6. I don't think this is actually such a great move in the position. So I definitely actually wanted to avoid this. So on knight f3, I play e5. And this is one of the quirks of the system. Sometimes you just play e5 early on, and you can get kind of a very reasonable version of different openings you might get from like Philidor or Rui or this kind of thing. And now white has, okay, a lot of options here. If he goes bishop b5, I was thinking I would maybe play bishop g4 here, or possibly bishop d7. I wasn't really sure, but I felt like this might be kind of an annoying move. But I was just going to figure it out. And I kind of had an inkling he was just going to play d4 anyway, which he ends up doing. Just because I had a feeling like, okay, he wants to go knight f3, d4, get this Austrian attack. So if I play e5, like, you know, he's going to fight for the center. So yeah, somehow I had a feeling like d4 was going to be the move. But yeah, bishop b5 I think is probably more annoying. And in fact, I was thinking for black, maybe I should play e5 here. I think it might be more accurate to do it before knight f6. But anyway, he goes d4, now takes g6. This is a position I've had a couple of times, and I think it's absolutely fine for black, because the king is going to castle, the rook gets to e8, and then white has to defend this e4 pawn. And although white has some space, it's very hard for white to get any kind of e5 break in, which if they can't do, then the e-pawn is always going to be kind of a target. And maybe the pawn would rather be on like f3. You get kind of a typical like English attack setup. Anyway, bishop e2, bishop g7, bishop e3, castles. And yeah, I thought a little bit here. I was calculating stuff like knight takes e4, takes, and rook e8, this kind of thing where white's two pieces are hanging. And if bishop f3 or bishop d3, I'm going to go d5. But it didn't look convincing to me. I thought best case scenario, we're kind of just simplifying here. And I didn't really see why I should force anything just yet. It also wasn't even clear that black is going to be better or anything like that. So just rook e8, just kind of adding some pressure. And I should remind you guys, this is like g60, so I don't have like a ton of time to calculate on every single move. I'd rather just like get the pieces out and get a comfortable game. So white ends up taking on c6. I think what he was worried about, because I was also thinking about playing this in case of a move like bishop f3, was now maybe playing knight takes e4 and then d5, which kind of leads to similar positions as before, and I'm not sure if I would do this. Knight g4 is also an option I was thinking about here for black that looks kind of Looks kind of interesting. It's a pretty thematic idea because the knight on g4 is hanging, but so is this one on d4. So if white takes, then the idea is to go bishop takes g4. And then if knight takes e6, then there's this move queen d7, which I did not see. This is something that the engine showed me after the game because I wasn't really sure if this was working, but it is working, but only because of this move. Without this, then after bishop takes d1, I think black is losing a piece, like knight takes d8, and white captured an extra piece and all this. But okay, this knight g4 might be kind of annoying, also takes in d5. So white takes first, and now goes bishop f3. And again, I could take here and play d5, but again, I didn't really see the point of going for this structure with my double pawns. It didn't look very appealing to me. So just rook b8, I'm just kind of getting the pieces out, hitting b2. White played rook b1, and now c5. So this move, I think maybe is the first time I actually like commit to like some kind of plan. I want to put the bishop on b7, then long term maybe get the queen to b7, like bishop goes to c6, queen goes to b7, maybe doubling rooks on the e-file, and just putting pressure on the e4 pawn. I also thought about a5 here, because of course the pawn is hanging. I don't want to just leave it dangling forever, but yeah, with a5, I just wasn't really sure what I'm achieving with this move. White will go rook e1, my bishop on a6 doesn't really hit a whole lot, and yeah, I kind of just didn't see the full picture from here. So I went here, rook e1, bishop b7, hitting the e4 pawn. Now I was strongly expecting bishop f2, just because it looked like so natural. White just played rook e1 to defend the pawn. Now bishop f2 gets the bishop out of the way. Maybe white can play bishop h4. And the plan here was to go knight d7. And then I thought, okay, I can transfer like knight f8, knight e6. I feel like the position is probably like really close to equal, but okay, it's a very playable structure. You know, I feel like I'm not worse and I have ideas, so I felt very comfortable here. Maybe in some cases I'll consider taking on c3 and weakening white structure, but that would be a pretty bold decision. I would need a big reason to do that. But instead he goes queen d3, which I guess defends the e4 pawn. Somehow I wasn't expecting it. And because I wasn't expecting it, I felt like there must be something wrong with this move, you know? So I immediately started looking at these tactical ideas with c4, queen takes c4, just because it's very forcing. And then this typical trick, knight e4, followed by playing d5 to fork whatever takes on e4 and the queen on c4. And yeah, more I looked at it, you know, this time it felt like the concrete stuff was kind of working out. So I ended up playing it. Queen takes. This is forced because otherwise the pawn is just going to be lost. Like if queen d4, knight takes e4, and the queen is hit, so white isn't in time here. So he has to take. Now I take on e4. And I'll show you guys what I calculated. So if knight takes e4, the idea was to go d5. And I thought queen would go somewhere, like queen c5. I take here. And yeah, to me, I actually thought this position was not necessarily better for black, but I thought very, very playable. This was one of the positions I checked with the engine and actually thinks white is slightly better here. With like moves like b3 coming, and I can kind of understand there is a blockade and the pawns on the queen side are weak. So this is one I likely just kind of misevaluated or maybe was too optimistic about. But in the game, white takes with the bishop. In here, I actually had a choice, but I'd already decided I was just going to take and go d5. But I was also considering bishop takes c3 in this position. But then, okay, after queen takes c3, I take on e4 with something like rook takes e4, bishop takes e4. At first, I was liking this a lot because we have like a position with opposite color bishops, and because white has played f4, like this diagonal is open for the long run, and that seemed kind of nice for me. And then maybe at some point I can play f6 to cover my own dark squares. Not that black's dark squares aren't weak as well. But the more I actually looked at it concretely, the more I didn't like it. Like I thought actually white can just snag this pawn, and I didn't see exactly what I'm doing there or how I'm going to be playing for the win. So I decide to go for the other move here. Bishop takes e4 first. And here white goes bishop takes a7, which we'll get into. If knight takes e4, then d5 again. And yeah, I'm just going to take on e4 here. Here I felt pretty comfortable because I thought that in the ensuing structure, I felt like black should be better. Like this b pawn is a target. I can maybe push d4 somewhere to harass the bishop. And this f4 pawn and this bishop on e3, they really feel very weak to me. The white would just so much rather have this pawn on f2 that I often feel like these structures are really, really nice. So yeah, I felt like black should be at least a little bit better here. So white goes bishop takes a7. And this one I just felt like wasn't working. I wasn't sure exactly what my opponent misjudged here. It wasn't really clear to me, but the tactics were pretty straightforward. So bishop takes c2, and now white plays bishop takes b8. There's not really, like, there's a lot of in-between moves that white can try, but basically black is always fine because I can go rook takes e1 with check if I need to take and get the rook off of c1. And if white ever takes on e8, I take back with the queen, and I always have this queen e1 mate in the position. So any kind of like bishop takes b8, bishop takes b1, I have a very important tempo here, and of course bishop is still hanging. So I mean I went a little bit deeper than this just to be super concrete, but basically it was all I felt working out for black because of the back rank ideas. White could. I was thinking, yeah, white could also try, like, let's say rook c1 here, but then minimum I can take and maybe even take on b2 or play rook a8. Black isn't down any material, and I just felt like position is opening up. I have the two bishops. I'm always going to be kind of happy with this, especially now that I have these like kind of mobile pawns in the center. So this all felt very much okay to me. White play bishop takes b8, bishop takes b1. And now, again, I have an important tempo that this rook is hanging. If the position was a little bit different, then like queen takes c7 or bishop takes c7, these might be kind of unpleasant moves. But here, e1 is hanging, so there's nothing really that white can do other than rook takes b1, which ends up playing. And now queen takes b8. And yeah, I felt like we would get this position if white played bishop takes a7. This all felt very logical. But I evaluated this position as totally winning for black because I have like a super strong bishop against a knight that doesn't have any like great outposts. Knight d5 eventually always just kind of gets hit with c6. And I felt like my king was safer because of this f4 advance. And now I have all these checks with like queen b6. I have all these squares to kind of infiltrate. The rook can get in. Just looked like a very nice and technically winning position for black. And I was mainly expecting h3, queen b6 check, king h1, and then I would probably either come in with like queen f2, or I can also consider c6 here and just d5. Just looked very nice to me. There's also ideas of playing like bishop h6, forcing this pawn to advance, and then just going after the dark squares. So yeah, just looks super nice. Not to mention like b2 is a weakness, and yeah, white needs like time to play like b3 and kind of fix their position. Anyway, he ends up going king h1. And I didn't spend that much time here. I think I spent like, because at this point, okay, we're again G60, so we're down to probably under like 20 minutes here, maybe even less, because we were spending a lot of time. I ended up going queen b6 quickly because I was very shocked by king h1. Actually, I was like, why would you play king h1? Why not just play h3? Right? You know your back rank is going to be a problem. If I give this check, you can move your king. You know, why commit to king h1 before this check is given? And so I was like, that's weird. And I just play queen b6, like doesn't change anything for me. And then here he plays h3. Like, yeah, that's okay. Doesn't really make sense. But then after the game, this is again one of the positions I briefly glanced at the engine, and I only noticed this one because it shocked me. Apparently, black had queen takes b2 here. I just like totally did not even for a moment consider this during the game. Like I was already calculating lines with maybe like going bishop takes c3 somewhere, and okay, white has to be careful where they move the queen because bishop takes c3 with the pin on the b file. But yeah, queen takes b2. I don't know. I just didn't cross my mind. Completely winning. Everything is hanging. Knight is hanging. Back rank is hanging. Yeah, it's strange. And if this was Puzzle Rush, I was thinking like, wow, I would spot this in a second. I was like, I would see this immediately. Like, okay, the first move I look at is maybe this one. I'm like, oh, it doesn't work. Oh, some back rank stuff. Queen takes b2. It could be so fast. But because I was like, yeah, just kind of disrupted by this king h1. I was just so expecting h3 in this position. I was like, huh, that's weird. And like didn't take a second look. Okay, I just go queen b6. It doesn't change the, for me, it doesn't change the evaluation of the position, right? I'm just playing here. Anyway, queen b6, h3, queen f2. White plays queen f1. And yeah, here I spent a little bit of time because I was actually strongly considering to just trade everything off and go for this endgame. Because I saw I had two good options here. I can take this one. And then my first thought was rook e2. Because, okay, just to go in actively. But I didn't like rook a1. White just, gives up the c-pawn and just starts pushing the a-pawn. This felt like the most active thing they could do. And I was calculating up until around here. And I saw that if I could get this position, rook b8, a7, rook a8, then I would just go for this because I felt like this is actually 100% winning. My king is just walking over to the queen side. I'm going to pick up this pawn, and then I have two connected passers here. And at any point, if white goes like rook c1, I'm just taking on a7, defending this one. So white can't trade off the weak pawn for anything. And so my king is just faster, and I felt like, okay, 100% winning. Then I realized, of course, that white doesn't have to push all the way. He can just go like rook c1 here, and by the time I regain this pawn, he's going to be winning back one of my other pawns. Like if c5, then this one, and I'm just not in time. So once I saw that maybe we're getting a rook endgame like this, I was like, no, I don't. This is like, why would I try to like win this like one pawn up position? White has an active rook. Like no way, no way. So the second thing I considered was rook a8, with the idea to plant the rook on a3. And this one I felt was very likely winning. Like white can play here, I'll go rook a3, rook c2, and well, black just brings in the king, like king g7, king f6, king comes in, white's rook is super passive. I felt like this was very close to winning just because I've had in games like this before, especially like in Blitz, where like one rook is just so much more active and the king has an easy way in and the opponent has multiple weaknesses, and it's just like you never hold it in practice. But okay, I wasn't 100% sure, and I'm not like a pawn up, and again, why would I try to grind out this like rook endgame when I already feel like my position here has to be very good with the pieces that are on the board. Better bishop, better queen, better rook. So ultimately, I felt like it's not worth it to trade, but I did very seriously consider it because I thought it was kind of a technical approach to the position. Instead, I keep the pieces on the board, which I think was probably more practical decision. Queen d2, white plays queen c1. I say, okay, I don't have a better square. Queen f2, I go back. Queen f1, and now I played queen g3. And okay, now I have a couple of ideas like bishop h6, bishop f4. I'm also threatening just to take, and then I have two connected passers, which looked very good. So I definitely would take on c3 here. White goes rook c1. And yeah, now the main move I was considering was this one. But the problem was knight d5, which is very annoying. White has this check. White is now threatening this one. And I was considering like king g7, because if rook takes c7, then I have rook e1. And if knight takes c7, then, okay, the idea is to take on f4, but the problem is the rook is now hanging with check after king g7. So I think pretty sure white can actually just do this and then just king g1. And I don't think black wins here. So yeah, this one bothered me. So I decided just to go c6, which I think is the best move. Just stopping knight d5. I can go d5 myself. And now again, I just want bishop h6, and this is a really difficult pawn to defend. If white goes knight e2 ever, then just like queen e3, rook e1, bishop h6, I felt like it's all over here because everything is pinned, and it's just a matter of time before black breaks through. So c6, white played queen c4, and here I did a little bit of calculation, and I think it was pretty accurate, so I was happy with this one. I just played d5, and I saw that, okay, the queen It can't really stay connected to this pawn without, okay, it has to play like, queen a4, then we're going d4. But the key line here is after queen takes c6, I'm going rook e1 check, takes, king h2, and bishop d4. So this was kind of the key move that I had to see. And white's just completely lost because this is an immediate mate threat, bishop g1 check, followed by bishop f2 and queen g1. And there's some checks, but just one or two. And the only way to stop the mate is to play knight e2 and just give up the piece, which doesn't really save the game. So I was happy with this one. It basically is game over here. Knight e2 I takes, queen f2. Now just hitting this one. And if queen f3, then black actually mates in a nice way here with queen g1 and queen e1. And if the king goes back, then the queen is again covering the key escape score, and bishop g1 is a typical... This is a puzzle rush I did find during the game. And if the king comes up, then it's just always mate here. But I think the exact one I was looking at was this one and queen e7. And that. So, yeah, instead white played queen e4. And now, okay, this doesn't lead to mate, so I just go h5. The idea is to go h4, and then queen g1 will be mate. And okay, nothing white can do. Of course, black can also win this slowly, like taking all the pawns, but I think this was just most straightforward. Now I play queen f3, and now we go back to our previous mating idea of queen g1, queen e1. And yeah, that was GG.